All right. Well, let's take a moment and check in with the phones and talk to our friend A. Ron here in Texas. Aaron, what can we do for you?
Hey, Christy, it's good to talk to you again. It's been a little while.
Yeah, what's on your mind tonight?
So I wanted to just call in and first, I was really excited when I tuning in and seeing Alice on the program tonight because I saved a video of her and Shannon Q from just the other day, and this conversation was the perfect thing that when my partner's dad, who's a preacher, is ready to listen to what all is wrong with purity culture and the upbringing that me and my partner went through, and then also the what's so wrong about the love of God and religion, and that conversation just hit every single topic that I would want parents to hear that have kids who have deconverted. And it was so good. So Alice, I wanted to say thank you so much for laying that out there. And that conversation was so good. And I recommended it to several people since, and it's definitely something that's going to be shared. So really good to listen to. If anybody that hasn't heard that, go back and listen to that.
Thank you, Aaron. That's very, very kind of you to say. Yeah. I'm always encouraged when I hear that anything I've either written about or podcasted on has helped someone's family. It's very gratifying for me when I hear from parents themselves who are like, oh, my daughter sent me this chapter of your book and it helped me understand like the way she couldn't describe it. So that means a lot. Thank you so much for sharing that. I hope parents do listen to it.
Yeah. And I think just to kind of work in what you guys were just talking about with editing the Bible, and hopefully there'll be a version of the theology of Christianity that's more palatable than it is today. It still doesn't change some of the stuff that you and Shannon were talking about in that episode about how detrimental it is that the concept of love has strings attached to it. There's that expectation of obedience that goes along with Christian love. And how damaging that is to bake that in, baking an expectation with what you understand love to be affects every relationship that you go and then try and make a loving relationship. It just means that you're
making a very bold and proud claim that it's unconditional love. That phrase gets thrown around over and over and over, even though the conditions are right there on the page. But you had a interesting notion for us around how the things that we kind of restrict, like Seth was saying, can lead to our turn-ons. What was on your mind?
Well, yeah, Christy, I've been curious to what you would say to this. I want to hear Seth, Alice, please share. You talked about, Christy, you said that the pendulum swing, we probably won't ever really get away from it completely, and I don't see how we can, because when we think about what turns us on, it is the suppression and the compression of our sexual selves, and then the enjoyment of that release as culturally. Like the reason why miniskirts are so hot is because they weren't a thing, and then they became a thing, and so is attraction and interest in aspects of sexuality and kink, is it dependent on a prior suppression and rules that are able to be broken?
I mean, yes, but mostly no, right? Because I do think that our sexuality is a way for us to sort of act out or maybe work out the oppression that we've experienced. But we're always going to experience some form of oppression or fear or anxiety, no matter how our society is structured. I think it's important to remember that sex is just a form of play, and mammals use play as a way of practicing skills and forming social bonds, but also as a way of sort of like excising our fears. So it makes sense that we would sexualize the things that we are terrified of, and that we would, have incredible amounts of pornography centered around, nuns, for instance, or any of these other number of things that we feel sort of ashamed about. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we are always going to be forcing that type of oppression on people. Certainly not in the organized and, I don't know, maybe wildly like illiterate fashion that we have been on this particular subject. Do you two think that that's fair to say?
It's funny, I had written about, you mentioned the nuns and that sort of nun fetish that
Mhm.
I had written recently about how many religious schools were so weird about school dress, proper dress, modest dress, that their solution was school uniforms. And mostly this existed, I think, because of the female. And now you've got an entire field, an entire fetish category of schoolgirl uniform porn out there.
Right.
It's just one of those things where the more they try to repress what people are curious about and desire naturally, I think the more they're going to want to do it. The forbidden fruits, they'll be perhaps more dysfunctional as they do it because we have not properly prepared them. But this whole idea that, do I think that the psychology of the human mind will implement some kind of an auto repression culture because that adds a little bit to the excitement of breaking the taboos? There may be instances of that. I don't see that as an overarching phenomenon. I generally think we're going to become smarter about, we're going to become wiser about, and hopefully become a little more evolved about human sexuality. I don't necessarily think we're going to pendulum swing back into a kind of Puritanism just because deep in the dark recesses of our mind we want to. We want to get freaky in the,
We have
we
to
put
get
on the
yelled
hooks
at and
and
feel
eyes kind
guilty
of thing.
about it.
I mean, I don't know. I mean,
There's
I'm not
enough
a
to be
social
afraid of in
scientist.
this world without us, inventing new things.
Hmm.
Alice, do you have
Right.
anything to add before we speak to the next caller?
I think it's an interesting thought you brought up, Aaron, that that so often what turns us on is the forbidden, is coming from repression. I think that I'm not too worried about that going away, partly because my imagination's pretty great, but it's not great enough to imagine that we'll ever live in a world without some form of repression or trauma. And I think
Mhm.
there's a relationship between turn-ons and trauma too. And certainly repression can lead to certain types of trauma. But I do think it is, I also think that, yeah, humans, like other species, have been using sex in so many other ways, like for play, for soothing over arguments, for making up, um, for procreation, for just fun, for pleasure. And I think it's really interesting looking at what little evidence we can gather from hunter-gatherer tribes and the way they played with sex and utilized sex. And one book that really helped me was Sex at Dawn
Dr.
by
Christopher Ryan.
yeah, and his
Mhm.
partner Giselda, or maybe it's his partner at the time, I forget, but she is also credited as a co-author on that book.
Mm.
But I remember learning about the comparison of Homo sapiens to bonobos in particular, as well as chimps. Chimps are the more patriarchal, rapey type that we're related to, and then bonobos are the more like make love not war type that we're very also closely related to. And I don't personally, I have a hard time imagining maybe that bonobos have systems of repression and shame, but they certainly enjoy sex and like to have a lot of it and use it as a way of communicating, connecting, and yeah, playing. And it's interesting because they get incestuous, and it's just another form of play and love with them.
Mhm.
And it is challenging to our notions of sexuality and consent that we as sapiens have today. And I don't know, I'm very curious about all of it.
Yeah. How does all of that land with you, Aaron?
I mean, I think y'all solved it. No.
Well,
Yeah.
I don't want that kind of pressure.
Well, all
man.
right.
Well, the pressure makes it kinky. That's
Oh.
the point.
That's where the fun is. Sure.
I really appreciate that all of that perspective. I've often gone back to what I've heard about the book Sex at Dawn. Haven't read it, but heard about chimps and bonobos and how we kind of are a blend of those things. I do wonder what what sexuality would look like if humans were able, or what our relationships and structures would look like if we were more in line with our biology, and would we have the kind of marriage and relationships and the things, would we do things the way that we do them if we felt really free to be ourselves? But yeah, thank you so much, guys.
Question.
I really appreciate it. And this is such a great topic. I appreciate y'all talking about this.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, glad to hear from you.